Hi everybody, it's RPG Grandma, and today's video is role-playing games versus role-playing games. You're like, what are you talking about? Well, okay, so we've been doing virtual, which of course just automatically is going to also, a good chunk of it, apply to in-person game. But there's another kind of role-playing game that when you do searches, you will bring this stuff up, and it's video games. So let's talk about knowing the difference between original role playing games and knowing the difference between what they are calling role playing games. Now, I am old enough to remember punch cards for computers. I know how big the spool computers were, how much room they took up. So, yeah, I watched video games come into existence. All right, for the computer, the text-based stuff, and the little blocky dudes, and then finally we get little pixel art that we thought was so cool, and to what we have now, and the capabilities of the games to improve drastically over time. Just like I'm old enough to know to have lived when there wasn't an internet, and how computers had to talk to each other back then, and the laws involved with that. So yeah, Granny knows, lived through all that. Okay, so computer games are hands down. Why is it doing that? That's weird. Based on the real life games that we were playing, whether that's computer chess, or whether it's something today like World of Warcraft, which I guess dates me, on that stuff. Okay, so old school role playing games, the ones that require pencil and paper. Okay, how are they different? They are massively different. As I talked about before in the previous video, it requires the imagination of everybody at the table. You're creating the universe in the moment. You're building it on the spot. There isn't really, even if somebody even if the DM has notes about, when they get to this area, these things are here, and that they made themselves or purchased. It doesn't make a difference. Even if they are using charts and stuff, there's still, everything's being created in the moment. How are the NPCs talking? What do they look like? The randomization is happening in the moment. So many different things can happen in an in-person game or a virtual game, because it's in the moment. The universe is being created right then with everybody's minds, everybody's creativity. Even if you play towards the board and get into this, why it keeps doing that? It keeps doing something weird. I don't know. Technical difficulties today. Okay, so we'll see how this video redo ends up doing. That is totally different, I'm sorry, than the role-playing games on the net. Multiplayer games. It is. And here's why. Before, you're using, even if there's pictures involved, and like I said, little minis on the table, those minis are still, a good chunk of them, and terrain and stuff is still being created by somebody who sat there and painted them, picked out, this is the perfect thing. There's all this choices that are involved by the people playing the game for everything, whether they use the setting, whether it's little props or they don't, whether they paint things or have little paper things. There's so much that's chosen by the people involved. Okay, that's not what's going on when you get a video game. Yeah, there's creativity of the creators, absolutely, and just so we're, for the record, I'm cool with playing all those games that are in computer land. But it's not your imagination. It's somebody else's imagination. So if you use music, somebody else is choosing the music for you. Not you. If you ever use sound effects, instead of you either finding the sound effect you want to use or even creating the sound effect, for those of you into sound, special effects, um, you're not the one doing it. Somebody else is. You're not the one choosing the art that you didn't create or sketching the art that you did create. Somebody else has made all those choices. What the NPs who the jokes about all these MPs that always say the same thing whenever you go through certain areas, what they're going to say. They have a rather limited vocabulary. We all know that. Even with all the stuff that's been done with AI, is like I can tell an AI story on the net. You can tell them. All right. The computer voices, some are better than others, but again, it lacks something. And like I said, it's a group of gestalt going on when you're playing a real role playing game, and I'm going to call them a real role playing game, because the gaming world in table gaming world is who came up with the term role playing game. But it just burns my biscuits that everyone thinks the video games are role playing games. I'm sorry, I've played in those games. I've got accounts in some games that are multiplayer. Nobody plays their character. Nobody. It's the biggest, they're just playing themselves, and that happens in tabletop too. But it's why is it doing that? It keeps darkening, and it never did that before. It's so strange. It's just not the same. And the amount of imagination and creativity you have to bring to the game is way up here. And when I'm going through a video game, no matter how much I enjoy somebody else's creativity, there are games I totally enjoy that I will play them multiple times even. But for like just the regular one-on-ones, let alone when I go out and venture forth and play with other people. And there's some game things I've been on there forever. There's a reason I have a huge empire, But at the end of the day, people are just being themselves for the most part. Even when I was playing a Vulcan and the Star Trek thing game, or somebody else was being a Klingon, sure, we'd say some catchphrases, but for the most part, you're on vacation. You're in somebody else's imagination completely. So you don't have to imagine what your Vulcan looks like. The computer's telling you. You don't have to imagine what the planet looks like. The computer's telling you. So from my perspective, they're fun. And I'm about fun, and I love games, so I'm in no way saying don't play computer games, don't play those multi games, but you can't make up your own skills. You can't make up your own class. There are parameters that will kick in at some point that will crush your referee's creativity, and I find AI very lacking myself, so I'm like, yeah, whatever, people over at WotC on that one. And I just, then you're not having to exercise your brain at all, which is one of the coolest aspects of role-playing games, is exercising that brain, using your brain, getting into the characters. And I just don't really see it happening. Maybe there's a few people, but for the most part, I don't see it happening. So I think it's been the greatest marketing ripoff in the universe to call some of the games I've played over the years role-play games on the computer. I just call them what I think they are. Video games. They are video games. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with using the virtual boards and all that for a role-playing game that we're streaming. I don't have a problem with that. But just know the difference in the imagination level and what you have to bring. You have to bring so much more, and that's what makes it so much more fun.